Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
My son-in-law called me and texted me and said he'd come get the kids because he shot April, our daughter.
Okay, are the police on the line?
Yes.
Okay. How old is April, sir?
April's year-old.
Okay. Stand by. Sir PD, I'm 30, incident 1284.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Michael Andrew Jace, guilty of the crime of murder of April Jace.
A 10-year-old boy stands in a courtroom, recounting the absolute worst night of his entire life. His voice trembling as he describes the moment his father told his mother to run to heaven right before pulling the trigger. The man who said those bone-chilling words wasn't some nameless monster from the shadows. He was Michael Jace, a television actor who millions of Americans welcomed into their living rooms every single week. The same man who played a righteous police officer fighting crime on one of television's most acclaimed dramas was about to commit an act so heinous, so calculated, so utterly devoid of humanity that it would leave his own children permanently scarred and a community absolutely devastated. Michael Jace was born on July 13, 1962, in Paterson, New Jersey, and he spent decades building what seemed like a respectable acting career. Starting in 1992, he appeared in everything from major Hollywood films to popular television shows. You might remember him from his small role in Forrest Gump, where he played a Black Panther leader, or perhaps you caught him in Boogie Nights or the Planet of the Apes remake. He had guest spots on Law & Order, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and even portrayed boxing legend Mitch Green in a 1995 HBO movie about Mike Tyson. But it was his role as Officer Julian Lowe on the groundbreaking FX series The Shield that truly defined his career. From 2002 to 2008, Jace appeared in 88 episodes of the critically acclaimed crime drama, playing a devoutly Christian police officer struggling with his sexuality while navigating the brutal, morally ambiguous world of Los Angeles law enforcement. The irony, the absolutely devastating irony, of a man who spent years portraying a law enforcement officer on television only to become a cold-blooded killer in real life isn't lost on anyone following this case. Behind the scenes, however, Michael Jace's life was falling apart in ways that the public couldn't see. Financial difficulties plagued him in his later years, creating enormous strain on his marriage. After The Shield ended, work became increasingly sporadic. He had a recurring role on Southland from 2009 to 2013 and made guest appearances on shows like CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, Burn Notice, The Mentalist, and Nikita. But his last credited role came in 2011 with a film called Division III, Football's Finest. The steady paychecks had dried up, the fame had faded, and the financial pressures were mounting with each passing month. Then there was April. April Denise Lown Jace was born on May 6, 1974, and she was everything that Michael Jace apparently couldn't stand to lose. She wasn't just beautiful, she was accomplished, driven, and fiercely independent. April was an extraordinary masters track and field athlete who specialized in sprinting events. In 2011, she won a gold medal in the 4x100 relay at the World Masters Athletics Championships in Sacramento, representing the Trojan Masters Track Club. Running wasn't just a hobby for April, it was her passion, her identity, her escape, her joy. She lived and breathed the sport. Professionally, April worked as a financial aid counselor at Biola University, an evangelical Christian college in La Mirada, California. Her colleagues described her as dedicated, warm, compassionate, and deeply respected. She had 3 children, Savoy Brown from a previous relationship, and 2 sons, Nehemiah and Caleb, with Michael Jace. The couple had married in 2003, shortly after Michael's divorce from his first wife, Jennifer Bitterman, was finalized in 2002. But by 2014, the marriage was crumbling under the weight of financial stress, jealousy, and control. Prosecutors would later characterize the relationship as one marked by obsession and control. Michael Jace had become increasingly suspicious that April was having an affair, despite absolutely zero evidence to support his paranoid delusions.
Prosecutor Tanaz Makayev told jurors Jace was obsessed with his wife, who was trying to leave him amid allegations she had been unfaithful.
He was losing control of his wife, losing control of his finances, losing control of his career, and watching helplessly as the woman he claimed to love prepared to leave him forever. Neighbors would later reveal that April had actually packed some bags and left with the kids the night before the shooting.
And then it settled down because she took her things and she left.
She had taken that crucial first step toward freedom, toward safety, toward a new life without the man who had become increasingly controlling and volatile. But like so many victims of domestic violence, April came back. Whether it was to gather more belongings, to talk things through one more time, or simply because she believed her husband when he promised he'd be calm, we'll never truly know what brought her back to that house on May 19, 2014. What we do know is that on that fateful evening, April returned home with their 2 young sons after attending one of the boys' baseball games. It should have been a normal, mundane, beautifully ordinary Monday evening. It should have been routine. It should have been just another day in the life of a devoted mother and accomplished athlete. But Michael Jace had other plans. According to evidence presented at trial and detailed accounts from prosecutors, Michael Jace was waiting for his wife with a loaded revolver when she walked through the door with their 2 young children. He didn't explode in sudden rage. He didn't lose his mind in a brief moment of insanity. No, he waited. He planned. He positioned himself. And when April walked into their home, probably expecting to have a difficult but necessary conversation about their failing marriage, Michael Jace opened fire. The first shot struck April in the back as she entered their residence. Can you imagine the absolute terror? One moment you're walking into your own home, your sanctuary, the place where you should feel safest in the entire world, and the next moment you feel the searing, incomprehensible pain of a bullet tearing through your body. April fell to the ground, wounded but still alive, probably trying desperately to understand what was happening, why the man she had married was doing this to her. But Michael Jace wasn't finished, not even close. As April lay wounded on the floor of her own home, bleeding and terrified, Michael Jace approached her with the revolver still in his hand. He looked down at this woman, the mother of his children, his wife of 11 years, an accomplished athlete whose entire identity was wrapped up in her ability to run, and he said something so cruel, so perfectly designed to inflict maximum psychological torture, that it still sends shivers down the spine of everyone who hears it. "If you like running," Michael Jace told his dying wife, "then run to heaven." And then he shot her, in the legs, once, twice, deliberately, methodically, specifically targeting the very part of her body that had brought her so much joy, so much pride, so much identity throughout her entire life. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted her to suffer. He wanted to destroy not just her life, but everything that made her who she was. He wanted to take away her greatest gift, her defining characteristic, her source of strength and accomplishment. He wanted to kill the runner before he killed the woman. And their children, their precious, innocent, traumatized children, who were just 5 and 8 years old, witnessed every single horrifying second of it.
And in this case, the 2 sons, age 8 and 5, were witness to this shooting. Those kids will never be the same.
Can you even begin to imagine what was going through those little boys' minds as they watched their father murder their mother? The sounds of the gunshots echoing through their home? The sight of their mother's blood on the floor? The image of their father, the man who was supposed to protect them, standing over their mother with a gun in his hand? After the shooting, Michael Jace called 911 and confessed to what he had done. But even in his confession, he tried to minimize his actions, claiming that he had only intended to wound April, not to kill her. April's parents received the devastating news through a text message and phone call from their son-in-law, the same man who had just murdered their daughter.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
My son-in-law called me and texted me and said he'd come get the kids because he shot April, our daughter.
Okay, are the police on the line?
Yes.
Okay. How old is April, sir?
April's year.
Okay. Stand by. Sir PD, I'm 30, incident 1284.
Imagine receiving that message. Imagine the confusion, the disbelief, the overwhelming horror as you realize that your daughter is gone, killed by the man she trusted, the man she married, the father of her children. And then, imagine knowing that your grandchildren witnessed the entire thing. Michael Jace was arrested on May 20, 2014, the day after the shooting, on suspicion of murder. Bail was initially set at $1 million. 2 days later, on May 22, he was formally charged with murder by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. At his arraignment, protective orders were immediately put in place to prevent Jace from having any contact whatsoever with his 2 young sons, the children who had just watched him kill their mother.
The people are also requesting a protective order for the minor children. You must not have personal, electronic, telephonic, or written contact with either child mentioned. You must not have contact with either child mentioned through a third party.
The judge made it abundantly clear. Michael Jace was to have absolutely no contact with his sons. No letters, no phone calls, no messages through third parties, nothing. He had destroyed their mother, traumatized them beyond measure, and now he would be cut off from them completely. The only exceptions to this protective order were communications through his attorneys of record, and even then, only for legal matters related to the case. During the arraignment, Jace's attorney attempted to paint him as a concerned father who simply wanted what was best for his children. The audacity of that statement is almost incomprehensible. A man who just murdered his children's mother in front of them, who traumatized them for life, who destroyed their sense of safety and security, somehow wants what's best for them. It was a defense strategy that would become a recurring theme throughout the trial, the attempt to humanize a man who had committed an inhumane act. But the evidence against Michael Jace was absolutely overwhelming. Text messages showed his growing obsession and paranoia about his wife's alleged infidelity. Forensic evidence confirmed the sequence of shots, first the back, then the deliberate targeted shots to her legs. And most damning of all was the testimony that would come from his own son, forced to relive the nightmare in a courtroom full of strangers, all to ensure that justice would be served for his mother. The trial wouldn't begin for another 2 years, but when it did, the world would hear the full, horrifying truth about what happened that night. And Michael Jace's desperate attempts to claim he hadn't meant to kill his wife would fall apart under the weight of the evidence, the testimony, and his own chilling words, "If you like running, run to heaven." On May 24, 2016, more than 2 years after April Jace was murdered in her own home, the trial of Michael Jace finally began in downtown Los Angeles. In opening statements, prosecutor Tanaz Mokayev laid out the case with devastating clarity. This wasn't a crime of passion, she argued. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an accident that spiraled out of control. This was premeditated murder, plain and simple. Michael Jace was obsessed with his wife. He was consumed by jealousy over allegations of infidelity that had no basis in reality. He was terrified of losing control as April moved toward divorce. And on that May evening in 2014, he made the calculated decision to take her life rather than allow her to leave him. The defense team, of course, told a very different story.
While Makaya argued Jace had planned the murder, the defense countered it was not premeditated, that Jace was trying to save his marriage, but in that confrontation, he snapped.
It's really hard to come up with words for it when you've done what you've done and have to deal with the consequences, but he understands second degree, and his big thing was it wasn't premeditated.
They wanted the jury to believe that shooting someone in the back and then deliberately targeting their legs while taunting them about running to heaven was somehow an unpremeditated act of passion rather than cold-blooded murder. But the evidence told an entirely different story.
But you have to think about this, and I think the DA properly argued this in closing argument, is that he was holding a very heavy gun. And each time he pulled the trigger, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
He had to watch the results of his actions. This wasn't a single moment of rage. This was a sustained, deliberate attack on a defenseless woman who was already wounded and on the ground. Then came the most heartbreaking testimony of the entire trial. On May 25, 2016, Michael Jace's 10-year-old son took the witness stand. In a voice that surely broke the hearts of everyone in that courtroom, the young boy recounted hearing his father's chilling words to his mother moments before the fatal shots. "If you like running, run to heaven." April's older son from her previous relationship, 20-year-old Savoy Brown, also attended the trial. Every time he had to see Michael Jace's face in that courtroom, even from behind, it brought waves of depression and anguish.
Each time I have to see his face, even if it's from behind, it's really depressing.
After closing arguments on May 30th, the case went to the jury. It took them just about 2 hours to reach a verdict. Think about that for a moment. 12 people heard all the evidence, all the testimony, all the arguments from both sides, and they deliberated for roughly the length of a feature film before unanimously agreeing. Michael Jace was guilty of murder.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Michael Andrew Jace, guilty of the crime of murder of April Jace.
It took the jury of 6 men and 6 women just about 2 hours to reach a verdict.
On May 31st, 2016, the verdict was read aloud in the courtroom. The 53-year-old former actor was found guilty of second-degree murder in the fatal shooting of his wife, April Jace. But the verdict included an additional finding that would prove crucial during sentencing.
Jurors also found true that Jace personally and intentionally used a firearm, a special allegation that could add 25 years to life to his sentence.
It was definitely a murder, and the right outcome happened.
Even after the conviction, Michael Jace continued to insist that the murder wasn't premeditated. His attorneys tried to spin the second-degree verdict as some kind of victory, as if being found guilty of murdering your wife but avoiding a first-degree conviction was something to celebrate. But the family of April Jace knew better. They knew that regardless of the degree, their daughter, their sister, their mother was still gone forever. On June 10, 2016, Michael Jace appeared in court for sentencing. It was an emotional day for April's family, who sat in the courtroom behind the man who had destroyed their lives. Before the sentence was handed down, April's mother read a victim impact statement to the court.
"I cry on holidays and I cry on a birthday. I cry on May 19th. My mind often wanders to the future, and I think about how my grandsons will navigate their teen years. At what point in a friendship will they bring up the fact that their father killed their mother?"
The judge allowed Michael Jace to make a statement before sentencing. He apologized to April's family, but insisted that he didn't mean to kill her.
But I thought it was important, and I hear that it's important for the family to know that I didn't commit first-degree murder. There was no premeditated anything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He said there was no justification for his actions that night, and that he was profoundly sorry for the pain he had caused everyone.
No justification for my actions that night at all. I'm profoundly sorry for the pain that I caused everyone.
But during the middle of his statement, April's mother and other family members abruptly walked out of the courtroom. They had no interest in hearing his excuses, his apologies, or his attempts at self-justification. Nothing he could say would bring April back. Nothing he could say would undo the trauma inflicted on her children. His words were meaningless. The judge sentenced Michael Jace to 40 years to life in prison, 15 years to life for the second-degree murder conviction, plus a consecutive 25 years to life for the firearm enhancement.
The personal discharge of a firearm causing her death, the court imposes a consecutive 25 years to life. The sentence imposed today is 40 years to life.
Michael Jace, now 63 years old, is currently incarcerated at California State Prison, Corcoran. His earliest possible parole eligibility won't come until around 2056, when he would be 94 years old.
Finally, he's getting convicted. Finally, it's less of a burden.
For April's eldest son, Savoy, the conviction and sentencing brought a sense of relief, even if it couldn't bring back his mother. Finally, Michael Jace was being held accountable. Finally, there was some measure of justice. Finally, it was less of a burden to carry. Michael Jace has attempted multiple appeals since his conviction, trying to get his sentence reduced under various California criminal justice reforms. In January 2019, an appellate court affirmed his conviction but remanded the case back to the trial court to consider whether the firearm enhancement should be stricken under a new law called Senate Bill 620. But in June 2019, the same judge who presided over the original trial, Judge Robert J. Perry, denied the request to reduce the sentence, calling Jace's actions so egregious that removing the enhancement would be inappropriate. In April 2024, Jace filed another petition seeking resentencing under a different California law, Penal Code Section 1172.6. That petition was also denied, and in August 2025, an appellate court panel affirmed that denial. The courts have been consistent. Michael Jace is the direct perpetrator of this murder. He acted with malice and intent, and his sentence is appropriate given the absolutely horrific circumstances of the crime. Do you think this was a premeditated murder or a husband blinded by jealousy? Let me know what you think in the comments.